You're listening to a mini episode of the Practical Permaculture podcast with Joe and Elise.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's mini episode.
Ooh, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about Indigenous calendars and how we've been using them in our gardens.
Oh, it was an interesting subject that was raised in an interview that we did with Permacoach Meg McGowan, and
Yes.
it just kind of got us really intrigued and interested, didn't it?
Yeah. I think we were first kind of introduced to it by Brett, but I didn't really look into it until we started chatting with Meg. I have to admit, I did have to do a bit of Googling to try and find my specific region. There's no kind of central place you can go to find this area where you're living or gardening. But once you do, it's really interesting. Like, it's really captivated me and really got me interested in what I should be looking for. We know that Indigenous people obviously lived a lot more in tune with the land than we currently do. And so their insights and what they have put into these calendars reflects seasons that we're not really attuned to. You know, we might say, oh, we're having a cold snap and it's, spring started, or gee, it's really windy and it's been windy for, weeks. And so these kinds of things are reflected in these Indigenous calendars because they don't just say summer, autumn, winter, spring, and on the first of this month it's going to change. They kind of have more grey areas and it's a bit more in tune with what's going on. So yeah, I found it really interesting and helpful.
It was funny though that when we got started talking about it, and I started doing some research, and I've not found anything for my local area. So if there is anyone in the Hunter Valley, in the Wanneroo area, that knows of one or some sort of resource or can put me in touch with someone who I can have a chat to about it, that'd be amazing, because I've not been able to find anything. But something that I have noticed just for myself, and it was a little aha moment that I had, and I was the same, when Brett sort of introduced us to it, it didn't sort of, kind of gel for me instantly. In saying that, we were having a tsunami of information. So, there was only so much that was sticking at any given time. But when we had that conversation with Meg, and then you started doing some research and we were talking about it more, and I sort of realised that I'd been aware, I think maybe even subconsciously aware of those, for want of a better term, grey areas, like those in-between seasons. Yeah, so I'd realised that I'd been aware of these changes, and it had been part of my my observation of what was going on in my local area. But I hadn't really, I suppose, made that conscious or cognitive connection to what was happening out there and the seasons and how those changes were impacting myself and my family or my community on a bigger scale. I found that really interesting. So sorry.
You might be able to connect more with the Awabakal calendar there. Like, I know it's not your exact area, but I think, different councils have different amounts of funding. So depending what council area you fall under will depend whether they're kind of given it that investment, or if it's a smaller council, they might not have the resources to necessarily invest in those kinds of things. So even looking at neighbouring areas and councils that might have the information that you require, because a lot of it is done through your local council. So that's just a hot tip if you are researching.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That is a great idea. Because it's really interesting. So, like, from your perspective, what did you find for your local area?
Yeah, so currently, when we landed at the block, we were in what they call wet season, which is January, February, March. And when I looked at what that said on the calendar, it was talking about things, and I was like, oh, I can actually notice these things in my backyard and in my environment. So, like, one of the things it says was, the winds are predominantly from the north, frogs are plentiful, there's lots of water, the possums are fat during this time, and they can be seen moving through treetops, feeding and fighting. The shrubs and trees are loaded with wild berries, fruits, and native raspberries are around. In addition, bloodwoods are flowering and they bring the flying foxes and bats in with abundance. They seek the sweetness of fruits in their nectar. The grounds on coastal areas are sandy and covered with yellow daisies that indicate whiting mackerel and bloodworms are in season. Goannas are also feeding and beginning to breed. So it was
Oh,
really cool. Then
it's
we
really
went out
amazing.
camping down the road. Yeah, and we just noticed all these things. And they were there. They were always there, but because we're just not living more in tune with the land,
Mm-hmm.
it's so easy to just miss these little things that are happening around you in nature. Yeah, and then the next season I kind of started reading about that, thinking about what's coming next. So it says, if there's a certain flower that I need to know that's flowering, I can go, oh, hang on, this is the change of the season. I can see this happening, and I can, just start to be a bit more in tune with what's going on. So yeah, the next season now is actually March as well. So they kind of have an overlap. They don't say, okay, end of February, beginning of March. The last season ended in March and this one starts in March. So there's kind of, like I said, that grey and that overlap. And now it's mullet season, which it is. The mullet are out and everyone's fishing, and there's all these people here at Easter time fishing. And so, yeah, it was just
Mullet.
interesting.
Have you ever eaten mullet?
No, I don't eat
Oh,
mullet.
it's horrible. It is horrible. I shouldn't
That
say that.
is
There's people listening that go, a mullet is amazing. And look, it's a good fish. It's an amazing resource. I just think it tastes like crap. But but it'd be
Yeah,
good
and
to
they
then,
even said,
yeah. Oh, sorry, you
well,
go.
it's like the winds are changing. Yeah, so it's like the winds are changing. They're coming from the west. And it was saying the dolphins help herd the mullet to the shore. We actually went beach forward driving and saw all the dolphins on the weekend. So yeah, it's just really nice to see all these little things. And then I found another calendar that actually separated it into every single month of the year, which was really interesting too. And then it kind of had little observations. So the one for April was it the baby wallabies are getting their fur. Mundurum, I think is how I say it, have finished fruiting and they're stable. The Lamandras finished seeding, it's now stable. So these are all little cues, I'm guessing, that, they said, okay, well, now we can maybe start weaving, like cutting these Lamandra to start weaving. And, there's the goanna going into hibernation. So that might signal, obviously, that they can go into areas they may not have hunted before, or that the goanna is no longer a food source for them. So yeah, there's all these different things that I just found really interesting to read about, and I found a really big resource too that I'm still kind of working my way through, that has a lot more detail. But yeah, I just think it's really interesting when you put on that permaculture lens to think about the Indigenous calendars, how your life reflects the Indigenous calendars, how your daily activities or the things you enjoy doing, whether it's fishing or foraging or looking at the flowers or certain birds and wildlife, just putting that lens on of how these things can be integrated into our
Mm-hmm.
lives more, and how we can kind of take that on board and really kind of, I think, sit in that and sit in that knowledge, that ancient knowledge, and find a way for it to be relevant in our daily life.
Absolutely. I mean, to be able to take that into the design process, to design, your time, like you said, to allow for whether it's time to go fishing or whether it's time to do something else, to build that into your design and into your system, but also to observe how, and you touched on this before, how you are within those seasons and how you ebb and flow within those seasons, and knowing where your energies are high and when your energies are a little bit lower and you need to, maybe take it a little bit slower, or you can go ahead and do 300 meters of mulching, because you've got that, you've got that energy to be able to do that. So that'll be interesting to see over the years, your observations there as well.
And like you said, the design process too, if your Indigenous calendar says there's certain animals that are more active at certain times of the year that you previously weren't aware of, and that's when a certain tree fruits that you're trying to harvest, that's super relevant to your, your plans and what you're doing. So yeah, I just thought it was really, really interesting and super useful, and it's something that I want to learn a lot more about.
I just pictured you like full elbows out going for the fruit tree, like, get out of my way, animals, I need to get my fruit. Yeah, it is good. Like you said, there's no one central location. So if you are interested in an Indigenous calendar of your particular area, then you're going to need to do some research. Start with your local council, start with your local Indigenous groups, reach out to anyone that you possibly can, and see what you can find. And failing that, just observe. Be really mindful about what's going on and observe the things that are outside of your garden and your system. What's happening in your local area? What's happening to, different trees? What's happening to maybe waterways? All of those different things that you can note down, and then from year to year compare as to when that's happening, and build your own knowledge that way too.
Yeah. And jump on the Facebook group that we've got, because the Practical Permaculture community, I'll upload these ones that I found for my area, but then I'm sure other people will be in areas close by or would share resources and help each other find theirs if they're trying to look. I'll do a little bit of Googling for you, Jo, and see if I can find yours. But yeah, I think if you jump on there, everyone's super helpful and might have some more information about your local area.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Well, we hope you enjoyed.
All right.
Bye.
That's it. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Practical Permaculture podcast. Jump onto our Facebook group to keep the chat going and to look for any resources that we mentioned on today's show. Look in the show notes.
And if you enjoyed today's episode, then please give us a like, a review, and share with your friends. And if you didn't, then that's okay. We're sure you'll find the right podcast for you.